I had been suffering from a strong imposter syndrome for several days, thinking that I was not capable enough to become an influential storyteller and life coach. As I was ascending the 1,500-foot mountain, I was thinking about why I was even doing this business thing in the first place. I felt strongly my sense of purpose to open people up to new perspectives, help people develop a connection to their intuition, especially men, believe in the life of their highest excitement, have radical hope for the future, and ultimately help people connect to their true nature. But I noticed there was a knot in my body when I would think about the messages I wanted to tell people. There was some part of me that was scared to fully open myself, fully express myself, and fully be me to other people due to fear of what others would think of me. I got higher in elevation and the cold wind felt amazing. It made me feel alive. I had to run. I reached the top of the mountain, drenched in both mind and the fog sweat. It felt amazing. It felt raw. It felt primal. And I felt comfortable enough to let out an invigorated yell, as I had not seen anyone for the entire 2-mile trail. After taking some amazing drone footage at the top and beginning my descent, I continued to think about my recent imposter syndrome and felt into these emotional knots. I was thinking about the concept of polarity and saw everyone's authentic self-expression as having a charge that naturally repels certain people while attracting others, and I realized that there is simply no way to avoid some people reacting negatively to certain things I say, and that my imposter syndrome had largely come about due to altering and hindering myself in the messages I say on the internet in hopes of catering to everyone, in hopes that everyone would like me, and that's impossible. And the only way to overcome this imposter syndrome is to stop caring about this so much and to just be me. Of course, I will always remain as respectful, socially calibrated, and loving to others as much as possible, but it was about accepting that naturally my work may make some people angry and drive people away from me, potentially even people I know, but that this is all part of the process of being authentic. After my session in nature, I began writing and expressing myself more freely, and while this imposter syndrome did not completely go away, it dwindled a lot. It has been at the forefront of my consciousness way less. I doubt I would have made this drastic of a shift had I not gone out alone in nature and contemplated this, and that's what I want to talk about today, how freaking amazing and underrated it is to just spend intentional time in nature when it comes to healing and developing yourself. So I've been taking intentional walks in nature for a while now, probably for as long as I have been old enough for my parents to allow me to go on walks by myself. And if I had never taken these walks, I would not even be close to who I am today, because these walks allowed me to sort out the muck in my mind, integrate aspects of myself in dissonance, and feel into my heart what the next step is. And whether I was feeling hopelessly depressed, anxious about an upcoming event, excited about a victory, or just extremely happy, engaging with the natural world has always helped me in determining which direction I would navigate my ship next, or rather why my ship is even in the position it is in the first place. I imagine if I had never taken these walks, I would have never developed a strong connection to my intuition and thus never developed a clear life purpose. And had I not developed a strong connection to the heart, there's a good chance I would have just defaulted to whatever society planted in my mind and wondered why I was not happy. It's worth noting that it is the belief among many experts in the field of psychology that increased urban living, and thus less time spent in nature, is one of the key causes in the decline in mental health we have seen in recent decades. And this makes sense. I don't find it difficult to reason why a life of wake up, hit snooze 3 times, stare at your phone, roll out of bed, sit in traffic, sit in a box for 8 hours, sit in traffic again, stare at the TV, repeat, would yield an enormous decrease in humanity's mental health. And yes, that is an oversimplified version of the life of the modern human, but it really is not that far off from how so many people live. And I believe that when you spend more time around tall structures and right angles in trees, there's a problem. And this problem is one of feeling more isolated, stressed, depressed, anxious, and just lacking a sense of meaning and purpose. And I imagine many of you watching can experientially relate to this. Whenever I have been indoors for too long, I start to feel like a caged bird. I might start ruminating, getting caught up in unhealthy and restrictive thought patterns. I may start to get irritated by petty things, such as a page on my phone taking too long to load. It's almost as if the walls of the building I'm in are literally trapping my mind, creating a narrow filter for my thoughts to flow through, which results in a negative self-consciousness. To stop these unhealthy loops, one must expand that filter, and the easiest way to do this is simply by going outdoors and spending intentional time in nature. This is the easiest and most effective method of providing you with a sense of expansiveness, a sense of interconnected to all things, which yields a healthier perspective on various life matters. And if you do this intentionally and on a regular basis, your life can be completely transformed. Now back to the concept of thought in the filter analogy. As I mentioned, I've been taking regular walks in nature for many years now, and now that I'm older, I've developed a new perspective on how nature actually shapes you in the process of self-improvement and life purpose. When I was younger, there was still the narrative that I was separate from nature, that I was a completely differentiated entity that lived inside the head, behind the eyes, that was creating my thoughts purely by my own volition. But if you have the eyes to see into your direct experience, you will find that thoughts just appear out of nowhere. You don't simply create them, and the idea that there even is a you, a sense of being a differentiated entity that is somehow willing these thoughts into existence, is also just another bundle of thoughts that also simply just appear in your mind. So the reality is that thoughts are movements of the universe, of the cosmos, no different than the trees blowing in the wind or the sun rising and setting every day. They just happen, they're just thoughts, they're just movements of the universe. The thoughts that appear in your mind are largely determined by the context you are in and how it relates to your self-schema. If you are nervous about giving a presentation, you will have anxious thoughts. If you just hit a game-winning buzzer beater in a basketball game, you will have grandiose thoughts. If you just got home and plopped down on the couch after a long day of work, you might have thoughts of relief. But the point is that you're not the sole creator of your thoughts. Your thoughts are a concoction of your internal world with external events, whether those events are real or imagined. And if you're in a very contracted state, such as feeling anxious or depressed or just having stagnant energy from being indoors or just sitting too long, I notice in myself there is a very narrow filter that my thoughts run through, which, like I said, this often results in a negative self-consciousness, which only makes me feel worse when I'm in that state. But the way you shake up that stagnant energy is by moving your body, which is why every expert says that exercise is one of the best things you can do for your mental health. And I would take this even further, that by spending intentional time in nature, you expand that filter even more because you leave the human world behind, you leave your work and your obligations and your relationships behind, and you can just be yourself outside this everyday problem-solving state of consciousness that we spend our entire lives in. Virtually all practitioners of nature-based therapy believe that the fundamental mechanism behind improvement in client outcomes is the sense of expansiveness the environment provides that allows one's limited perception of self to expand. So it's like the filter I was talking about, it expands that filter. So what nature does is it provides you a totally accepting environment, but the real question is, are you going to accept yourself? Are you willing to look deep within, to feel into your fears, and sort out your muck? This can be a scary thing at times, which is why on your nature walks, you will want to remain as mindful as possible. When you do go out in nature, pick a spot that is relatively isolated. There should be as little signs of human influence as possible. Before starting your trek, have a few prompts in your mind so that your thoughts are directed towards a general purpose. Why do I feel so lonely? Why do I want this relationship? What's my definition of success? How do I get myself out of this rut? What is the meaning of life? Those are some questions you could use to get started. You can also check out my past blog post that has 100 questions on how to get in touch with your life purpose. I'll leave a link to that in the description. But as you are walking, try your best not to cling to any of these thoughts that you have too strongly. Watch your thoughts like you are watching a movie. You don't play an active role in the movie, you just observe it. Likewise, just observe your thoughts. Don't judge or label any thought as good or bad, and don't be looking for a certain insight or a light bulb moment to appear. Just let your mind be as unaltered as possible from your ego's desires. Basically, don't try to steer the ship too much. Be the witness, not the thinker. As you are contemplating, notice your body's reactions to your thoughts. Notice what makes you feel happy and excited, and how this excitement influences your future thoughts. Also, observe what makes you feel scared and closed up. And remember, don't forget to absorb the beauty around you. These nature walks are supposed to be relaxing. Don't be so hyper-focused on your internal world that you forget you are with nature in the first place. Try to remain as the witness for the entirety of your session with nature. Only afterwards should you seriously start considering plans for what your next step is. And when you're done, look at your session as a whole and ask a powerful follow-up question. What feels most true? What feels right? What feels solved? What still feels unresolved? Sometimes the right thing to do is to start with something small, like starting a habit of journaling every day. Other times it may be to start considering doing something more drastic, like leaving a relationship or moving across the world. But I promise you, if you do this intentionally, keyword intentionally, and on a regular basis, your life will be transformed. I absolutely promise you. So get out in nature, attune yourself to leaving the human world behind, and allow yourself to just be for a little while. If you know you're meant for something more in life but are unsure of what the next step may be, consider booking a coaching call with me. I will emulate the totally accepting environment that nature can provide for you, but I will also do a few extra things in that I will listen to you, ask you questions, and send other linguistic probes into your mind. If you are interested in that, head to my website. Link will be in the description, and that's all I have for today, guys.